Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series. Can we save the Oakland A's? And this 2033 season, which should be a pretty good test in our quest to save the A's, is about to get underway. Have a very different looking roster this year. A new first baseman in Kyle Manzardo, a new DH in Xavier Isaac, a new catcher in Jaden Boakai, a product of our farm system, and at least for the time being, a couple of new middle infielders in Sergio Estrada, who we signed as an international free agent a year ago, and Hideki Arakawa, who we actually signed as an international free agent a few years ago at this point. But we do have our primary free agent signing from this past year, shortstop Maui Ahuna, starting the season on a brief rehab assignment in AAA after he missed the last month of spring training. He just got healthy from that injury, so he should be joining us shortly, which will result in another change to the starting lineup and a move on the 26-man roster in which Estrada, Arakawa, and Justin LeBron all have roster spots that could be in jeopardy. I think it's hard for me to imagine sending down the switch hitter Estrada, so I think honestly Arakawa and LeBron are probably more in jeopardy of losing a roster spot once Maui Ahuna is ready. Also have some new pitchers. Picked up Jamie DeVore, our new number 5 starter, in a trade this offseason. And in addition to the return of Jeremy Scholl, 24-year-old who was with us last year, who came up through our farm system, Levi Sterling and R.J. Cope, a couple of other high school pitchers who have developed after we drafted them into major league prospects, are both going to get their most significant opportunities in the case of Sterling, and first opportunity in the major leagues in the case of Cope, to prove that they belong here in the majors with this Oakland A's squad. We touched on the preseason predictions briefly in our last episode, and the media and the gamblers and the prognosticators don't have big hopes for the A's. They predict we're going to be an 80-82 team and end up 4th placed in the American League West. Although the team has had a lot of turnover and is not as veteran heavy as it was in previous seasons, I still think they are underestimating us a bit, despite the fact that we continue to have the lowest budget and the lowest payroll in all of baseball. I think that ultimately we'll get this team to hopefully have a winning record when this season is done, and hope that when we get to late September, we are competing for a 4th playoff appearance in 5 years with these Oakland A's. We are going to have about $7 million to help by bringing contracts on board as we get closer to the trade deadline, so can probably add a player or two to help us, particularly if we're able to get the team trading the rentals to us to retain a chunk of their contract. And as we're ready to get the season underway against our divisional rivals in Houston, have checked the waiver wire. Nobody particularly interesting to me that I think will make a significant improvement to our 26-man roster. We do have Mason Miller reaching 10-5 status shortly, given that we retain a team option on him at $5 million for next year and what could be the final year that he's with us. That's not a big concern. Colt Keith, who we did sign this past offseason to a 5-year extension, will be reaching 10-5 rights relatively soon. He is a guy that conceivably we may want to move on from a trade down the line when his salary number gets a little higher after the first 3 seasons of that contract. But unless this year ends up being completely disastrous on the field, I don't think there will be any reason that we would trade Mr. Keith away before he obtains those 10-5 rights either. And we split the opening series in Houston, 2 games for us, 2 games for the Astros. Maui Ahuna has now played 3 games in AAA, so I think he's probably ready to come up. We're not going to let the performance of the middle infielders over the first 4 days of the year be a significant influence on our decision making, but we'll check in on it. Justin LeBron, 2 for 4 in the 2 at-bats that he has with a ribby. Sergio Estrada hitting .353 in 17 at-bats. And Hideki Arakawa has been the least productive, batting .200 over 10 at-bats. Given that Mr. Arakawa has been a well below average major league hitter with a 73 WRC plus over the course of his major league career, and he's not quite as good defensively as Mr. Ahuna, I think I am going to send Arakawa back to AAA. And what we're going to do is actually put in Ahuna as our shortstop and pivot Sergio Estrada to be our second baseman. Hopefully that will let us continue to benefit from what we think could at least be a respectable major league bat in the middle infield with Estrada, while with that 60 range, moving him to a position that's a bit less demanding and a bit less dependent on that range than shortstop will be. You can see he's not completely developed at second base, but playing it several times a week as our starter against right-handed pitching should give him an opportunity to hopefully continue developing there. And we'll see if Mr. Ahuna can give us a little bit better defense at short than Estrada has thus far. Obviously, an extremely small sample size, but the zone rating and defensive efficiency for Estrada through the first 4 games of the season are both very solid. And our A's are off to a nice start here in 2033 after splitting that 4-game series to open the season at Houston. We took 2 out of 3 at home against the Rays, and then we swept San Francisco over the past 3 games. A brief 3-game road trip out to the Midwest for Cleveland coming up, and then we'll be back for a series against Houston before we go on the road against the Angels and the Royals before finishing up at home with the last 2 teams in our division, Texas and Seattle, as we approach the end of April. And after a fast start that continued sweeping 3 games in Cleveland, the results on the field did get a bit more challenging for our A's over the rest of the month of April. Dropped a series in Houston, dropped a series at home against Houston, split 4 games on the road at the Angels, lost 2 out of 3 in Kansas City. We did bounce back to win 2 out of 3 against Texas, but have lost the final 2 games of the month at home against Seattle. So a month into the season, our record is 16-12. Taking a look at the standings, we are up half a game on the Angels and the Mariners, 1 game up on the Astros, and 2 up on the Rangers. Every team in the mighty AL West is 500 or better here in the early stages of the season. You can see there's a couple of absolutely awful teams in the American League. The Boston Red Sox and the Minnesota Twins look like they are poised to try to challenge the inept 2024 Chicago White Sox with their very poor starts to the season. Colt Keith leading the league in OPS, the veteran 275 average with 8 homers and 25 ribbies through the first 26 games of the year. So that 172 WRC plus that he's put up for us would be the best year of his career if he's able to keep up that kind of pace. Certainly not expecting that, but hopeful that he'll be more productive offensively than he was a year ago. Our closer, Andrew Nardi, with 9 saves, tied for second in the league, looks to be doing somewhat better this year than he did last year when he was actually below a replacement level player. He's got a 1.54 ERA and 17 Ks in his first 11 2/3 innings of the season. Taking a quick look at the broader team statistics, our 16-12 record is right in line with where we should be Pythagorean-wise. Middling offense that ranks 8th in the American League in runs scored, and we're generally towards the middle of the pack in just about every offensive category except for walks, where we happen to be second, and extra base hits where we're first, so that's nice. Runs allowed, 3rd in the American League, so once again our pitching is going to be a key driver of our potential success, along with our defensive efficiency, where we rank 3rd, 6th in zone rating. You can see we're in the top half of the American League in most pitching categories. WAR, where we're right in the middle, and walks, where we're a little below average, are the only exceptions. Starters rank 4th in ERA, and the bullpen ranks 5th. So pretty solid productivity thus far out of our pitching staff here in 2033. And midway through the month of May, things aren't going quite as well as they did in the month of April. We did win 4 straight to start the month, winning the final game of the series against Seattle to avoid getting swept, and then winning the first 3 out of 4 against Baltimore. But after that, we dropped series at San Diego, at Seattle, and home against Houston. So 3 straight series losses for us as we get to the midway point of the month. The division is still very tight, but we have slipped down to 3rd place, a game and a half behind the Rangers and a game behind the Astros. Colt Keith ranks 3rd in the American League with 13 home runs. Andrew Nardi still tied for 2nd with 13 saves, and we are half a game up on the White Sox and 1 game up on the Tigers for the final wild card spot in the American League here as we sit on May 16th, 2033. And unfortunately, we just got swept by Texas in 3 games on the road, which drops us to 23-22 on the season. Another milestone reached for Colt Keith, though, just hit his 300th homer. He picked up the 1,000th ribby of his career a few weeks ago. The batting average is dipped to 260, but still has 14 homers and 38 ribbies in 154 at-bats with a 153 WRC plus. So Colt Keith thus far in 2033 is certainly holding up his part of the bargain of the extension that we signed him to this past off season. And fortunately, after we dropped that 3-game series in Texas, we went on a 9-game winning streak, taking 3 straight at home against the Tigers, 2 against the Rockies, and then 4 on the road against the Tigers. We did unfortunately lose the last 2 games of the month on the road in Baltimore, but as we sit here on June 1st, we've put ourselves in a stronger position than we were, although we're 2 games out now. We have moved into 2nd place, half a game ahead of the Astros, and we are in the first wild card position here on June 1st, game and a half out of the final wild card spot. Colt Keith continues to have a really nice year for us, 17 homers and 51 ribbies, rank tied for 2nd and 3rd in the league respectively. And Andrew Nardi is now leading the AL with 18 saves and a 1.17 ERA with 29 strikeouts and 23 innings pitched. Indicates that he's having a pretty solid year for us thus far as well. Taking a look at the team statistics, we're a little worse than Pythagorean expectations, 2 games worse to be exact. But after going 16-12 combined in March and April, we ended up 16-12 in the month of May. So we're off to a good, solid, consistent start. Tied for 5th now in the American League in runs scored, and we are 1st in runs allowed with the best bullpen ERA. Also pretty good defensively, second in the league in defensive efficiency, and fifth in zone rating as we sit here on June 1st, 2033. So the season is off to a pretty solid start thus far. Not going to do our full mid-year review yet since we're not at the mid-year point, but we'll check in on a couple of our most important additions. Jaden Boakai, our new starting catcher, hitting just 203, does have 9 doubles and 5 home runs. The 63 WRC plus, certainly not impressive, and despite his solid defensive ratings, he's basically been a league average player. So hopefully we'll start to get a little more out of him going forward. Sergio Estrada, hitting just 229 for us, but he does have 12 doubles, 6 homers, and has put up a 93 WRC plus, playing both second base and short for us. Second base against right-handed pitching, so he's playing more often there, and he's playing shortstop for us against left-handed pitching now since Maui Ahuna is fragile, which guarantees that Estrada is in the lineup every day, but his numbers at shortstop are trending closer to league average defensively than when we checked in on him after that very small sample size at the start of the season. Not shocking, given his 60 range is not necessarily ideal for a shortstop. Maui Ahuna, as we kind of anticipated, struggling to hit with just a 205 average and a 69 WRC plus. Still has been almost a win above replacement. Looking at his fielding statistics, 4.1 zone rating and a 1.070 defensive efficiency rating through 43 games are pretty solid defensively, as we would expect from him. Kyle Manzardo, one of the big trades from this past offseason, hitting just 252 with 8 homers and 28 ribbies. The 112 WRC plus is not bad, but quite honestly, probably we're expecting a bit more than that. Xavier Isaac, another new addition, has been disappointing, hitting 238, 7 homers, 28 ribbies, a 90 WRC plus. He's basically been a replacement level player. Certainly we're hoping for a bit more from Xavier Isaac. Bobby Cabral, check in quickly on him, and the batting average has fallen to 219, although he does have 13 homers and 33 ribbies. His 110 WRC plus, right in line with what he put up for us a year ago. Last but not least, we'll check in quickly on last year's Rookie of the Year, Jake Ortega, batting 292 this year, does already have 17 doubles, and he has been more successful on the base paths and more proficient on the base paths. 10 for 10 stealing this year already, about a third of the way through the season after stealing successfully on 13 of 14 bases a year ago. So solid sophomore season from Jake Ortega. Does not look like he's going to experience much of a sophomore slump. Pitching-wise, all of our starters are 500 or better. The guy who we thought might have a spot in jeopardy, Jamie DeVore, 4.03 record and a 3.02 ERA. So for the time being, he's holding off Levi Sterling, who with a 3.21 ERA in 14 innings pitched, certainly looks like he could make a case to be in the rotation going forward if anybody falters. R.J. Cope in his rookie year is 2-0 with a 1.35 ERA over his first 20 innings pitched for us. With the exception of the left-hander Alex Vesia, nobody on the team has an ERA higher than 4.80, and everyone on the bullpen except for Vesia has an ERA below 4. So the pitching staff certainly holding up its end of the bargain here through the first 2 months of the season. And even though we are second in our division and only in a wild card spot as we sit here a couple months into the season, we are ranked first out of 30 teams in the latest power rankings. So given that we are the team with the lowest payroll and the lowest budget in baseball. We're definitely punching above our weight thus far in this 2033 season. Before we finish up this episode, I just want to check in on one other thing for those of you who have followed us over the years and know some of our former players. We'll check in on a few of them. Joe Lewin is a guy that was involved in the big trade for us last year when we picked up the rental of Brian Ramos, most notably, who was productive for us, but unfortunately only played 14 games for us before he got injured. Lewin's control still looks like it's going to be an issue. He split the year between rookie ball and he got promoted to A ball, but still a long way off from being a big-time major leaguer. Chris Patterson, who we hoped to draft a few years ago, 5-3 with a 3.39 ERA, and the ace knuckleballer Andres Rojas pitched just 2 games this year before suffering a hamstring strain. Certainly more interesting to look at the batters. This is a list of guys who we've traded away and guys who we have attempted to get on our team at times in the past. Shoji Bame, 255 average, 14 homers, 44 ribbies for the Dodgers. Hidero Endo, doing Hidero Endo things this year. Was an injury-plagued year for him a year ago. Looks like he might have also had some injuries this year. He's only played in 33 games, hitting just a $174 and with 64 strikeouts and 115 at-bats, striking out well over 50% of the time, 75 WRC plus, and he has been below replacement level. Royce Lewis hitting 230 with Milwaukee. Brian Rincon, our former shortstop, hitting 200 with 6 homers and 2 homers and 6 ribbies for the Angels. He has walked 34 times for them. The 95 WRC plus is the highest number he's had in a few years at this point. If he can keep it up, he's been more than a win above replacement for the Angels thus far this season. Galterio Mancina continues to be one of the top players in baseball, hitting 327, 11 homers, and 53 ribbies. And Arturo Estrada, who was a key player that came up through our system that we traded away to pick up the rental of Juan Soto a year ago. Playing in high A ball this year, hitting 291 with 8 homers and 19 ribbies and 189 at-bats. Still looks like he could be a pretty interesting contact hitter with good extra base power, although honestly the 8 homers that he has thus far in high A seems like a bit of a mirage for when he eventually gets to the major league level. But the 122 WRC plus that he's put up this year is the best figure we've seen from him since the very early days of his in rookie ball. So he's going to be 22 years old soon. Certainly wouldn't rank him as a can't-miss prospect at this point, but it's only fair that we check in on notably what Estrada and Lewin end up doing since we did trade those guys away for rentals a year ago. And with that, we will call it an episode. Next time around, plan on simming forward about a month and a half to draft day. And we will also do our more formal mid-season review when we get another 30 or games so in the books. Also find out how Mr. Fisher is feeling about our performance on the field this year, as well as our performance with the other goals that he has set out for us. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.